Feeding horses is a very individual thing. There's lots of different feeds out there for people to choose from. Everybody has their own quirk, their own routine, and their own reason for feeding different things. So I'm just going to discuss a few things today and talk about the horse's digestive system. Horses have been around 50 million years, and their digestive system is very apt at digesting what they eat. Now, out in the open plains, they live in the open, they don't live in caves or anything. They feel comfortable in the open because they're prey animals, so they can see their prey. They eat very low quality roughage. They're fibre eaters, they're fibre lovers, they can digest fibre very, very well, and that's what they're made to do. So we bring them into a stable environment where they're away from their natural habitat, and we also ask them to work very hard. In horse racing, we ask them to work very hard and do a lot of mileage. And therefore, if we just fed them fibre, which is what they're very apt at digesting, we won't be able to get enough calories into them. So we do actually have to implement some extra feed to cover the extra calories. Now, horses have an insatiable need to chew. They need to chew between 30 and 50 times an hour, which is 60,000 times a day. And sadly, in captivity or in a stable, they just can't get that amount in. But we do our best. We do our best with the hay. But the reason why they chew this much is they're walking, they're picking, walking, picking, walking, picking, socializing, walking, picking, walking, picking. And in their saliva, when they chew the food, the saliva goes down. Their stomach is very, very acidic environment, and it's always dribbling acid. It's a constant flow of acid. So by the fact of chewing and swallowing, they have bicarbonate in their saliva that goes down and it buffers the acid in the stomach. So if they don't eat for a while, like as a human, we have 3 meals a day, if they were fed like that, they'd get stomach ulcers. That's the main cause of the stomach ulcers, is fasting in between meals and horses not getting enough fibre through the system. They don't like a big meal, they have a small stomach and they like a small meal. Unfortunately, we have to feed them with grains, which is very high in energy, very starch and very full of carbohydrate. And they can digest that in this area here. That's why we have the stomach can digest these through enzymes. The energy is taken from the cereal grains. Now, unfortunately, because we feed them quite large feeds, sometimes some of these grains pass through to the hindgut. Now, the hindgut of a horse is very apt at digesting fibre. They're fibre fermenters. This hindgut, which is called a cecum, that they have a thing called a cecum. It's a huge fermentation vat full of bacteria, absolutely billions of bacteria. And it's at a beautiful pH, it's at a very nice acidity. When the fibre comes through, the fibre is fermented and broken down, and they get the energy from that, what they need for their bodily functions and for everything else. It's perfect. Because we need to add more, sadly sometimes we have to be very careful not to overload their front gut, and so sometimes it slips through to the hindgut. Now, when you get these cereal grains going through to the hindgut, something terrible happens. It's very, very uncomfortable for the horse. The food, the carbohydrates, the cereals, they ferment. They change the acidity of this huge, beautiful fermentation vat. The bacteria then can't cope the pH change, it drops. They can't cope to live. This beautiful bacteria, the flora that's in there, they die. A lot of them die. They get absorbed into the body of the horse, into the bloodstream of the horse via the stomach wall, the cecum wall, and goes around the body. And sadly, sometimes horses get what's called laminitis, because as these bacteria die, they produce endotoxins. The endotoxins get absorbed. They go through the body and end up in the feet. Now, the horse doesn't have a good circulation of the feet. When the endotoxin ends up in the blood down there, it causes thrombosis of the feet, which is breaking of the laminae. The laminae breaks and it causes laminitis. So we have to be really careful to keep the uptake of fibre really high and add our grains as well, but not add a big meal, not 2 big meals. I mean, the point is, little and often is what exactly a horse needs of fibre. So use same rule for your carbos. You need little and often. So feed companies have designed feeds to help us. The science is really brilliant now on horse feeds. And fat, vegetable oil or fat that come from vegetables is a really good way of subsidising your horse's calorific intake. Now, if the fat seeps through to the hindgut, it doesn't seem to do any damage. So this is a really good way to feed your horse so it digests in the front gut of the horse. Really good energy synthesis from this. Also, the feed companies provide us with micronized feeds, which is, so they've been steamed, rolled or micronized or extruded, and that means that it can be digested very well in the front gut. We don't want it to go to the hindgut. That's just for your fibre. We like to feed a lot of fibre. We feed fibre 24 hours a day. The horse can just munch away as much as it wants. We also feed lucerne pellets, which is another source of chewing and giving the horse something to masticate on. Speedy beet's another form of fibre. They love fibre, and this is the hay also. Now horses, because they're in captivity, they do get behavioural issues. Because they're in the stable and they can't always chew and walk and chew and walk, they do tend to walk the box a lot. You see a walk in a box, it's just they're distracted. They don't often get much interaction with other animals, other horses. So they also feel a need for socialising. So sometimes they weave, sometimes they chew things, sometimes they eat the bedding, they chew things because they need to have this saliva going down to buffer the acid in their gut, in their stomach. So I try to hang the things here to create a bit of interest so they don't get bored. Try to give them as much hay as I can. And I try to think about giving them plenty of fat in the diet, which is a very safe way of giving energy. And I try to use micronized feeds and plenty of really fresh hay that comes from Canada. It's very good to the hay, speedy beet and things like that. So we do try to think about the horse's mind as well as its body. It's physiological, we try to look after its physiological side as well as its psychological side. And because they're hot-wired to eat fibre, they just love fibre, and that's basically horses have developed a very good system for that exact purpose. So just to recap on what horses need, the worst thing you can do to a horse is feed it a lot of feed and not work the horse. Horses walk up to 80 kilometres a night in search of food in the wild. So the worst thing you can do to your horse is overfeed and under-exercise. They get bored very quickly, they're very curious animals. So just to recap, little and often feed and as much hay and fibre as you can, because that keeps everything in sync in the horse's body. And if you need extra energy, fat is a very good way, and extruded feeds and micronized feeds are very good. Tidbits are not always the best thing to give your horse.